and I'm the curator of the exhibition, Viktor&Rolf, fashion artist, and also author of the book. Maybe some of you have seen other exhibitions I did also on Jean-Paul Gaultier, which was presented in Munich. I did a tour with Jean-Paul Gaultier for 5 years, and also another one with Peter Lindbergh, who was just in Munich also and is going to Italy soon. You know, after doing this world tour with Jean-Paul Gaultier, everybody was asking me, who's going to be the next designer you're going to do? And one, in fact, two I had in mind were Viktor&Rolf, but we had never met, and we have a friend in common who was always telling me, you should meet them. They're so nice, they're so funny. And I thought, they don't look funny in pictures, you know, they never smile. But one day I was in Paris in a restaurant, a small Japanese restaurant. I'm at the counter, and then the people there, they know me and they know what I do for a living. So they come to say, have you seen, there's Viktor&Rolf who are there. So I just went myself to introduce myself, and I said, hi, I'm Thierry, I'm from Montreal, and I do exhibitions. I'd love to do something with you. And they were like, yes, sure, would love to do something with you. And they were like, when? I was like, now. And then they said, perfect. So then we did this exhibition a year after, which opened in Melbourne at the National Gallery of Victoria, and that is going to tour in this book too. So in fact, I discovered two fantastic guys. You don't have to believe their really serious face when they're in magazines, in the pictures, because they're really, really funny. I have the best stories with them, but maybe they'll tell you some over there. So I think they don't need really an introduction, but we're going to show you a small video of the last 25 years for you to see what they've been up to in the past 25 years. It's great, Tom. Do you like Viktor&Rolf? Yeah, me too. So we're going to talk for a little while, so I don't want to make a very long introduction because I think really you would really want to hear from them, but from him, from Victor, who's with us today in Berlin. So please welcome Victor. Nice show.
Thank you.
Who was at the show earlier?
Raise hands.
Everyone. Okay, so basically everyone. That's nice. Was it the first time that you were invited to a haute couture show? I guess. Nobody answers now. So I guess yes. Well, thank you for bringing this to Berlin. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for all of us to be able to witness, a haute couture show. That's one thing I always say, and that's one of the reasons that I do exhibition and I want to work with people like Victor and Rolf, just because the work is so precious and nice, and nobody has the luck to be invited or to see up close these work that sometimes took weeks to create. So thank you for bringing it to Bread and Butter by Zalando. So
Pleasure.
Thank you. How was Berlin so far for you? Good?
It's very nice, very nice, yeah. I have great friends who live here. Actually, my godson lives here. He's somewhere here. We had dinner yesterday night, so I love Berlin.
And where's Rolf?
Where's Rolf? I think Rolf was high on drugs in the desert somewhere in the US. he went to Burning Man, and that was all arranged before this came together, so he makes me do all the work. Thank you.
Bon, so now it's going to be Victor and Thierry. That's it. No Rolf anymore.
Finally.
Finally, yeah. So we'll start with the start because one thing that, having worked with you so closely, one thing that for me was fascinating is, to know where you come from. Can you tell us a bit what kind of child you were, what kind of teenager you were, what your background is, in fact?
I was always drawing. I love to draw, and I would always draw dresses. I mean, it's very cliche, but that's what I did. And then at a certain point, I discovered fashion through fashion magazines. This was when I was a teenager. This was the 80s, meaning there was no internet yet, and there was very little access to information about fashion whatsoever. So there was one program on television twice a year, which was actually a German program, Neues vom Kleidermarkt. So,
do you know that show? Yeah.
So I would drool in front of the television for 45 minutes, and that was it. That was basically the way I got to know fashion. And through some fashion magazines, and then mainly perfume ads. I would be very inspired by perfume ads.
Like which perfume ads? What was inspiring for you to see in perfume ads? Was it the glamour or?
Like Poison from Dior, for instance, Saint Laurent. Fashion was something like unattainable, very glamorous, something mysterious. I think the mystery and the glamour was something that appealed to the both of us. That's also what we discovered in each other.
Because your parents don't come from the fashion industry or not have any glamorous background, I guess?
No, my parents don't have not a glamorous background and also not a very artistic background. No. My father used to be in the army, my mother was a school teacher. Voilà.
So fashion in the Netherlands in your youth, because I guess most of the people know Netherlands for cheese and Dutch clogs, not really for fashion, because it's more considered a hobby.
Especially at the time when we grew up, fashion didn't exist. Now it's different. Now there's more magazines, there's more shops. That has reached the Netherlands too. But when we grew up, there was basically nothing. So yeah, indeed, fashion was considered to be more of a hobby than a serious profession, a serious goal in life. But we both wanted to be fashion designers. And then, in order to become a fashion designer, there was one school that was considered the best in Holland. It was Arnhem, and that's where we went, and that's also where we met each other.
So was it your only goal, like when you finished your high school, to become a fashion designer and to study at that school, or you had also other options? You could have become something else?
Yeah, I considered becoming a violinist. I used to play the violin, but I didn't have the same passion for music that I had for fashion. So it was kind of a tough decision, also for my parents, because they were sort of in tune with me becoming a violin player, and then all of a sudden I wanted to become a fashion designer, which was, well, for them it was new, but for me it was not. It was something that I had always wanted to pursue.
Were they supportive?
Very, yes, very. Yeah.
And then, so Arnhem came, you moved there, you meet Rolf.
Yes, well, we actually already met before. We did the entrance exam. That was 2 days. That's when we met for the first time. Yeah, and then we were allowed into the school, and we were in the same class. We didn't, we were in the same class, meaning we had the same assignments, we studied together, but we didn't work as a duo. We only started to work as a duo afterwards. And the education was very abstract, I must say, in the sense that there was a very strong focus on the artistic part of designing, and there was no knowledge, no transfer of knowledge whatsoever about business or about the reality of what fashion is. In Holland, there used to be hardly any media, no industry whatsoever. So becoming a fashion designer in that kind of a wasteland was, well, a very abstract thing to pursue.
So what were you doing mostly in school? Was it like pattern cutting and sketching, and like were you creating? Because it's creativity is not something you learn in school. You have it or you don't have it, I think.
Of course, I mean, but creativity can be developed, and you can learn a lot of skills, obviously. So we learned a lot. We learned to draw, we learned pattern cutting, sewing. We had to be able to make everything from scratch, so from scratch to a finished garment.
So what happened from the moment you finished school? Like, what do you do when you're a fashion student and you want to become a fashion designer? Because it was very different in the early 90s than now, where
at first we didn't do anything. At first we were unemployed. And at a certain point, we decided that we really needed to leave Arnhem because we were just going nowhere. Rolf would come by my place at like 10:30 in the morning and we would have coffee. And then by 12 o'clock we would, well, anyway, we were going nowhere. So we decided to move to Paris. We sort of squatted in an apartment with another friend of ours who worked for Margiela at the time. Yeah, and then we were in Paris pursuing our dream, but I mean, of course, nobody is there waiting for you. So first we tried to have an apprenticeship with a designer or a design house.
Together or?
Separately. Yeah. The idea to work together.
But you went together to see Mr. Saint Laurent.
Yeah, but that was after the contest.
Yeah.
So while we were living in Paris and not achieving anything and not doing much, we decided to participate in this big contest in Hyères, in the south of France, which was like the biggest contest at that time. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to meet people, basically. We saw it as a networking opportunity, really. And we also saw it as an opportunity to make something together. We thought that would be nice to try, to see what that would be like.
Was it the first time you did something together at Hyères?
Yes, it was the first time, yeah. And from day one, it went very naturally. So we designed this collection together. We made it together in this tiny apartment. I mean, 2 like briefmarken of a room. But the clothes were enormous. So there was hardly room for us. Oh, it's so funny. This friend of ours, Marcel, he was still living with us. And we used to have this bed, which was made out of gumi. And during the day, the bed would go against the wall, because otherwise there would be no space to draw all the patterns. The patterns were huge. And we would put all the pins in the gumi mattress. And then at night, the mattress would go down, and Rolf and Marcel would share the bed because it was such a tiny... I mean, they were not in a relationship, or there was just no space. And then in the middle of the night, Marcel would wake up and he would go like, guys, no pins in the bed, really? so yeah.
So you went to Hyères and then you presented this collection, but at the time it was so... As the first time that you worked together, it was also a first experience for you, but I think you didn't even have a label and everybody else was quite...
I had never flown. We flew to Hyères. It was the first time I was on an airplane.
Okay.
And, yes, and also we didn't have a name. We were not a label. We just had this collection, and there was this whole group of designers participating, and they were all extremely professional. They had like a name for their label. They had these like sewn-in labels, and they were all so organized, unlike us. And then we won all these prizes, and they didn't know what to call us. So they said, you know, the prize goes to Viktor&Rolf, because that's what we're called, Viktor&Rolf. So we thought, oh, it's kind of, you know, yeah.
That's a good name.
That's a good name.
So you kept the name.
So we kept the name, yeah.
And what did you win over there? What was the prize?
We won 3 palm trees.
Very practical.
The city of Hyères is Cité des Palmiers, I think. So
okay.
It's like, the first prize goes to Viktor&Rolf, and here's your palm tree. And the second prize also to Viktor&Rolf, another palm tree, like small ones. And then there was one prize of the Prix de la Ville d'Hyères. And the mayor got on stage, and he was like, Viktor&Rolf have won the Prix de la Ville d'Hyères, which is an amount of 5,000 francs. Anyways, he made it sound as though it was 100,000 francs, like 100,000 francs, which is a lot of money. But then he had this accent of the south, and it was 5,000 francs, 5,000, which was already a bummer. And so he gave us this so-called check, but we never got the money. We called and called, but we never got the money. But we got a lot of, I mean, the networking opportunity was very well succeeded, and it was just a great place to show our work. It was just a wonderful platform to start from. Yeah.
Yeah, because it gave you international visibility, but also
yes.
I think it gave you access to a publicist for 1 year.
Yes,
or
yes. Sylvie Grumbach helped us out for much longer than a year. Yeah, we met a lot of people. Like you said before, Sylvie said to us, who would you like to meet? We said we would like to meet Yves Saint Laurent. He was still alive then. She said, okay, so she picked up the phone. We didn't meet him in the end, but we met his head of studio. So all these doors opened, and what was also very important for us was that we realized that fashion is not just a hobby. Fashion is a serious profession. And at the time, we lived in Paris, so all of a sudden we were part of this Parisian scene, so to speak, who took fashion very seriously. And that made us take ourselves more seriously than before. And that was a very important experience.
But, like, okay, you win the prizes, you get all this international visibility. After that, was your goal to create this brand, Viktor&Rolf, or did you have like a plan? Because as you said, it's not something that they teach you in school. So you have to learn everything from scratch. What was the plan? Like how you start your label? It's something I'm sure that many people want to know, like what you do, because it's you need to have a starting point.
I know, I'm sorry, but we didn't have a plan. The plan was, if you can call that a plan, was that we enjoyed working together. And it really went from season to season. After a year, obviously, we became aware that there was an audience. We were aware that we enjoyed working together and that there was something happening when we would do that. So that was the motivation. But there was no blueprint to become a label or to start a brand. And so there was also no, to be honest, no business sense whatsoever.
Because who were your fashion heroes back then? Who were the designers that you had great admiration for?
Well, Yves Saint Laurent is a good example because he was such an icon, Rei Kawakubo, a totally opposite icon, but someone who has managed to create a business out of being extremely creative. That's very inspiring to see. And of course, the people from the 80s, Claude Montana, Thierry Mugler, you know.
And what about the new wave, like Margiela? Because it was exactly the same year, you know, the Antwerp 6 became famous also, and, you know, it was a different vibe, let's say, than the 80s fashion.
That was great too. His work was great too. Yeah.
Because you came at a moment in fashion, I think, where, you know, you ended up being in a zone that was a non-existent category, because as the title of the exhibition we did together, fashion artists, you know, you're not fashion designers per se, but you're not plastic plasticians, artists as well. You know, you're a mix of both, using clothes as your medium, the way I see it. And your first experiments were mostly showing in art galleries in Paris.
The first 5 years of our career were very experimental, and we did try a lot of different things in different contexts, different media. We would not only make clothes, but also videos, pictures. We once went on strike, so the collection was a poster, which we put up throughout Paris. We went on strike because we were cross that there was not enough attention to our work. So we thought, okay, you know, to hell with it. We go on strike. Nobody cared. Afterwards, it's a nice story, and it makes sense in the story. But at the time, yeah. So yeah, we tried out a lot of different things, and then after 5 years, we realized that we were drifting a little bit. So we wanted to be more focused on fashion. We wanted to be more inside the fashion system, and that is when we decided to start showing during haute couture, which was a very, very weird decision in a way, because it was just the two of us. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any personnel. We didn't have anything. But we thought, oh, well, you know, let's put up a couture show in Paris next to Dior and Chanel. So somehow we managed to get that together. And the second season, they put us on the agenda, the Chambre syndicale de la couture. This is the governing organization that regulates the agenda of all the couture shows, which is a very strict French organization, which is there basically to guard the métier and the term haute couture as well. You cannot just, well, anyone can say I make haute couture, but if you're accredited by the Chambre syndicale, then it's really haute couture. So anyway, it's a big deal. So they put us on the agenda, even though we didn't follow any of their rules.
And what do you consider made you become famous? And what was the first time when you said, we're going to make it, it's going to happen? Because the first, after for many years, you didn't make any money out of your clothes, I think.
But we did make money out of our creativity, even though it was very tough at the beginning. But sorry, what can
you surviving because you did all your collection by yourself, you know, in your apartment. You didn't have an atelier and anything. So, you know, at one point you consider that, after, let's say, one show, is there a collection that you know, that it, you know, this is the collection that made Viktor&Rolf become alive?
After 5 seasons of doing haute couture, that was like end of the 90s, it became really difficult financially and also in terms of energy. And that was also the moment when we were approached by a Japanese company to start our own ready-to-wear line. And that's when we started ready-to-wear.
Why?
It was
to survive? To be able to survive?
To be able to survive, and also because we had the idea that that was what you're supposed to do. It's like, you know, if you're creative and then you start, and clothes are meant to be worn, all of that. So it felt very natural to do that. So we did that for 15 years. 15 years, yeah.
And why in many of your collections, for example, the Cutting Edge Couture collection, which was a ready-to-wear collection with a lot of haute couture, why were you always bringing haute couture in your ready-to-wear collections, presentations?
Yeah, we did that because we always like to use very exaggerated couture pieces to tell the story. Somehow, through that exaggeration, we found it more easy to tell a story, more easy than through ready-to-wear. So, and we thought it was fun. It was just because we liked doing it. So we always kept doing couture, and it was always a part of the ready-to-wear shows.
And do you think you've learned new techniques from couture and to ready-to-wear? Do you think it was, easy to translate what you wanted to do in couture into ready-to-wear, or because at some point you stopped doing ready-to-wear in 2015? Is there a reason for it in particular that you preferred to just go back to haute couture only, or? Yeah,
we started having trouble with the time pressure and there were a lot of collections to be made all the time, so that puts a lot of pressure on you. And we just had the feeling that we were not able to perform as good as we wanted to within that medium. So we started to feel pressured, and we didn't enjoy it as much, and we thought that was not good. Also, as a business, it was okay, but it was not. So then we decided, let's do what we love to do. Let's do couture, and let's stop ready-to-wear.
Because I think many of you maybe don't know like the pressure of the system. In fact, it's very tough for designers, because when you design a collection, let's say that is presented during Fashion Week, it's been taught.
Yeah, we would work on overlapping seasons. So sometimes we would work on 3 seasons at the same time in different phases. The collection would be in different phases of development. So yeah, we felt pressure. I mean, there are a lot of people who do amazing, beautiful work and who don't feel that. So, well, it is possible, but we had difficulty.
One part that is very important, I think, in your work is the fashion shows. I think it's one thing that you enjoy tremendously. And many of their shows, if you've seen in the introduction video, you always see Viktor&Rolf, whether it's with the collection with Maggie Reiser, Russian Doll, where you were layering her with piling up all the couture clothes one after the other. Even in Zen Garden, placing all the models, according to the drawing on the Zen Garden. Why do you want to be involved in your show, and what is important for you? Is the way that you work leads to create also the show and the collection together, or?
Usually it will start with an idea about the presentation. Usually that's a strong element of the design process. We don't necessarily want to be a part of the performance, but sometimes it just feels necessary to be there. Like with the Russian Doll show, the idea was that there would be one girl who would be wearing everything. So then you have a practical issue, like how do you solve that? She needs to be dressed on stage. Who's going to do it? So it made perfect sense that we should be the ones doing that. And that then turned into a whole show. And it can have something beautiful to feel the energy in the room. Fortunately, the energy was good. I mean, if the energy is not good.
Yeah, but she was a bit sweating. Does any of you've seen the show? Do you know that collection, the Russian Doll collection? It was quite spectacular. Do you think sometimes that you push the envelope too much for some collections or fashion shows?
Well, in hindsight, yes.
Yeah.
We have done things where perhaps it was a bit much for everybody, for the models, for the audience. Like we did one show where all the models wore clogs with heels, like wooden clogs, like the Dutch wooden shoes, and they were also wearing these metal rigs with lights suspended and sound, and they would float across the catwalk in pools of their own light. Yeah, this was a bit much. Yeah. In hindsight, yeah.
One thing that is
but it looks great in a museum, by the way, as a sculpture.
Yeah, it looks fantastic in a museum, but not to walk daily life. Like to go to do the groceries, it's a bit complicated, let's say.
Please.
Like one thing that was fascinating for me was to discover, in fact, how you collaborate together. Would you say that you collaborate, or that you're a duo, but in a way you're one person? So can you tell us, in fact, how you work being two? Because you say that the idea for a collection starts with the idea of the show, but who gets the idea first? Is it an idea that starts and then you develop it together, and then the clothes come, and does Rolf makes more the coats and you do more? No.
Anyway, I mean, we don't necessarily start to think about coats or dresses, but no. I don't know. We sit at a table that's filled with like trash, and we talk. And we'll draw, and it comes from there. It's very difficult to distinguish who does what. It's really an ongoing conversation. And by now the conversation has been going on for almost 25 years. Well, minus the past week where he's in the desert, but yeah, it's a conversation.
So it's really a dialogue between two artists doing clothes together.
Yes, yeah.
And do you make a difference, like when people say, oh, you're more fashion artist, you're more artist, you're more fashion designers, in which category do you see yourself?
To be honest, we came up with the term fashion artists to forego the question, are you a fashion designer, are you an artist? We thought, okay, if we call the show Fashion Artists, and if we call ourselves fashion artists, it's sort of out of the way, then people can ask themselves, oh, what is a fashion artist? So...
You are an artist. And you know, about creativity, you said that creativity is really something that you know, you can develop. Do you think that you know, by doing all these collections, that every season I think you push for new things and you also bring new techniques to haute couture? There's things that we have never seen before.
For ourselves and for our team, every season is there's a new technical challenge. Yes. I actually wanted to say about our method of working. It sounds very vague. We start talking. We talk. We have certain ideas, but also visual ideas. We'll say we want it to be very angular or very round. Then we sketch a lot. We don't work on a computer. We'll make a sketch. We give it to our atelier, which is upstairs. And they will make a first toile, and then we work on the toile. We work very much in 3 dimensions, so we'll have lots of fittings and develop the shapes in fittings.
But how do they react? Like, for example, when you did this collection, performance of sculpture, or some other, even the models, I guess they must be surprised when they do the first fittings with you. But how does the atelier react? Are they sometimes happy, or do they, because it must be a challenge sometimes just to be able to technically be able to create your work, because there's also a whole engineering system to make it
yeah, I like to think that they enjoy the challenge. They sometimes, our Martin, the head of our atelier, he would look at a drawing and he would say, guys, there's something like gravity. So.
Did it ever happen that you had ideas that were impossible to do?
Rarely.
If you draw it, it can be done?
In general, that's the rule. If it can be drawn, it can be made. Wow. Like, no discussion.
Lucky
but I must say, we have an amazing team that we've been working with for a long time. So, I mean, you develop techniques together and you develop a rapport together, which allows us to make those kinds of shapes. Mm.
Because in the show that you've just seen, this show, maybe not everybody knows that it was regrouping 3 different collections, Vagabonds, Broken Dream, and Action Dolls. Mm-hmm. These 3 collections have something in common. How would you describe, in fact, your approach to create the first, Vagabonds? It's almost like a trilogy. These collections. So
the red thread is this working? The red thread is that we were working on recycling, different ways to recycle used stuff. For Vagabonds, we started with our own archive of fabrics. We had 20 years of old fabrics lying around, and we felt like doing something very like hands in the dirt, like something very manual. Something very organic. At the same time, it felt like taking stock, you know, like sometimes you look at your past, there's all these memories that you have. And for us, these fabrics were like memories, and they were all woven together. So without regard for which season they were. So old and new, everything was mixed and turned into something new. That was the idea behind it, basically.
But it was not a nostalgic move, thinking, oh, we're going to recycle the archives and...
No, not at all. On the contrary, it was the idea was to look at the past in a loving but also slightly clinical way, and then use it to create something new. Go look towards the future. That's also why there was no distinction between which fabric goes where. Everything was made equally important.
Because when we look at most of your collections, and when we look in the videos and even in the slideshow that is playing now, most of the pieces you see are quite timeless. It's not like you follow trends, or if you know that camouflage or blue is going to be the color of the season. You don't go that way. It's not the way you work.
No.
But
no.
how do you describe your style? Because it's so unique and it works so much with oppositions. You know, it goes from romantic to very aggressive. You know, like your Flower Bomb collection, where it was all pink and then all black, and then it's really, you know, the opposites.
God, how do I describe my style? I don't know. Graphic Baroque.
Graphic
Baroque. I don't know. Sculptural.
Sculptural.
Maybe you describe it.
No, but I can describe it. But you know, it's just you always like to work with oppositions of negative and positive and.
Well, yeah, we'll always look for a certain
also.
tension. There needs to be a tension between either hard or soft. But that sounds very vague and very global. But yeah, there should always be a tension. Something that's very perfect or that's broken. Something very rich against something very poor. Yeah.
And where do you get inspiration mostly?
Fashion itself. Often our work is a reaction to what we did before. Like the Vagabonds collection was everything that was braided and hand woven was made after we did something that was very pure and white and angular and perfect and pristine and almost like you couldn't touch it. So after that we wanted to do something very organic. So it also goes like that. It's a reaction to what we've done ourselves.
And in working with all these different fabrics, is there like something that you always had in mind that you think, oh, this will be something that you would like to do, but that you want to maybe keep this idea for a special project? Or is it something that you would like to do someday, just like a movie or cabaret or a special?
That not necessarily, but we'd like to work for Cirque du Soleil. That would be kind of cool.
That would be nice.
And it would have been great to do the Hunger Games, like a big kick-ass movie. Yeah, something like that, you know? Just to have a different type of experience designing.
Do you get inspired by movies, by art, by music?
Yeah, yes and no, yeah. But never in a very direct way, like, oh, I see an exhibition and then I'm going to make no, it's not, no.
No?
That's not, no.
Because for the last, one of your, for Vagabonds collection, also you've been asked by Madonna to do costumes for Art Basel performance of Tears of a Clown. How was this?
It was great. Well, it was thanks to you. It was great, and it was also very funny that Madonna knew exactly what she wanted. So she was very persistent about what the costume should look like.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I hate clowns, and they love clowns. You've had clowns in your collections before, but this is. Would you do like stage costumes for one singer? If one singer would ask, like, oh, "Can you do all the stage costumes?"
Of course. Oh, yeah. We recently did something for Lady Gaga. I mean, we've done things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Miley Cyrus also. Mm-hmm. But the whole show, is it something that you would do?
Yeah, of course.
Besides Cirque du Soleil, which.
Sure. Yeah, if it's a great artist, yeah.
Good. And I think you're here also to announce something, right?
Yes, that's correct. We're doing well. The reason why we had this show here is that we're doing a small collection together with Zalando, which will be launched beginning of next year. It's not very big. It's like 20-something pieces, and this is the logo. This is just a few impressions. The idea behind the collection is recycling. Zalando is sending us their old stock, and we are using their old stock to create something new. And that's why we showed this particular selection of pieces just now, because they all were designed with a similar idea in mind. They all are like a meditation on recycling. So we thought that was a beautiful link between our couture and this new project.
It's very Viktor&Rolf.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci.
We'll take some questions from the public. I'm sure that some people here have some questions. Any of you have any questions by any chance, or? Really? Ah, there you go. Microphone. If you can just please stand up and say your name when you...
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Rose. I'm from Denmark, Danish y'all. And I would like to ask you, you call yourself fashion artist, but and your work is definitely very artistic. Which place do you think or impact do you think your haute couture has on fashion? How can we use it in everyday? How can we interpret it?
Well, to us, it's like a laboratory where we experiment. So it's really a place to develop ideas. So it's more about ideas than perhaps real garments that are going to be worn. The last collection actually seemed pretty wearable, but we've obviously done things that are much less wearable. So I think the impact is conceptual. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Ulrike. I actually have a question in regards of who is who from both of you. Because when I look at the collection, I see something very traditional, very feminine, and then also I see some part of craziness, very edgy. So who is who in that design process?
I want to answer.
Would be kind of great if now all of a sudden I have an answer to this. I think we're both
Crazy.
both. I think. Or maybe you should ask my friends who are here.
Oh, no, I can confirm they're both crazy. Other questions? Don't be shy, huh? Yes.
So obviously with the exhibition that you had in Melbourne, which was incredible, well done both of you, but I found that it really reached a completely different audience. I had people like in my Facebook feed who were sharing it who had never heard of you guys before. How important do you think it is to be doing these things to reach new audiences, and this like Zalando collaboration? Do you think that all brands should branch out and show on different platforms to reach new people?
Oh, I have no opinion on what other brands should do. We personally like to show in museums and in galleries next to doing catwalk shows because we think it's a great way to look at our stuff in a different way. On the catwalk, it's gone in 40 seconds. And in a museum, you can look at it much more closely, appreciate the craftsmanship. Also, you can create totally different synergies between collections. It's a totally different way of looking, and it's very democratic, which is nice. And the same goes for a project like this. It's an opportunity to talk to a different kind of audience. And we also like the idea that an idea that's born in this laboratory, it's an experiment from the laboratory, that it can be used and developed for an audience as a wearable product. A wearable and available product.
If I must add something, the reason also to do these exhibitions, if you think about it, it's easier to see, for example, a Picasso in a museum than to see a Viktor&Rolf dress. You have more chances if you go to any museum in the world to see a Picasso or an Impressionist painting. To see a Viktor&Rolf dress, even if you're invited to the show, and you're on the first row, and even if it's shot by the greatest photographer for the greatest magazine, it doesn't give justice to the beauty of what the piece are. And I think these pieces, they can bring the same emotion than any sculpture that you see. When people ask me why fashion in museums, one of the reasons why fashion in museums, just look at the work of Viktor&Rolf and you immediately understand that it's so unique. You can make your own definition of what you consider art or not. It's really about what emotion it brings you. So that's my opinion. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, Victor. My name is Ashley, and I'm from Amsterdam. My question is, how do you look at the Dutch fashion industry now, and what would be your advice for a Dutch fashion designer?
Oh my God. Well, It has changed very much from when I studied. There's a fashion media. I mean, there's magazines. There's on the internet. There's a lot going on. To any starting designer, all we could say, or all I could say, is try to be original. Try to do your own, make your own work. Be authentic. Strive to do that, and then the rest will come.
It's a good advice. Follow your passion. Victor?
Hi, Victor. Goedenavond.
Hoi.
I just want to thank you, first of all, for being here and sharing your story with us. Yeah. I just want to, like, a personal tip from an experienced designer. I'm busy now with, I wouldn't call it a brand, but it's more like a way for me to reach out to a certain group. And it's more about the message than about the design. And actually, to tell you honestly, I don't have any fashion background. I'm no designer or whatever, but I just brought a bunch of people together, a graphic designer, a real designer. And it's just the idea that it's mine. Would you think it's an insult to fashion, me doing this? Or do you think there is an opportunity for it? And what would be like?
Go for it if you want to do it. I mean, if you're passionate about it, by all means. And if you work with other people to help you, or if it's a collaboration, you can also work with a designer who maybe knows more than you.
Yeah, it's not
about
a
group effort.
It's not. I'm not making haute couture or whatever. It's just simple hoodies with a message, and it's just for me. I would like to inspire and reach out. So you think?
Yeah, exploit the group, I'd say.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
I don't think there's any rules to follow anymore. When you see what the fashion industry is now, even you have sweatpants that are $2,000 now, and all these people like Vêtements, for example, who do all these collaborations with so many brands. You could be one of them. There's different ways that you can see fashion. I think if you believe in your product, and how now it's a lot about image and marketing more than talent, unfortunately. But if you have the talent and the good marketing, you have all the way to be successful. So I believe in you. Maybe one last question. Someone?
Alex is running off with the microphone. Oh, no.
Hi, I'm Ali. Thank you for sharing your whole history with us. I just have a question. Do you invest in fashion yourself as well? You
Personally?
you
I
had
buy
struggle.
clothes?
Yeah. No, invest in a special brand. Like you had struggle in the beginning.
In our own brand.
Okay.
In Viktor&Rolf.
Okay.
That's also my main investment. Seriously.
But you're a collector also.
Yeah, but that's totally beside the point. Thank you, Thierry.
Well, thank you, Victor.
Yeah,
thank you for these tips and for being in Berlin and to share with us this new collaboration with Zalando. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I hope you have learned a lot about Victor. And of course, Rolf, who's in the desert, but who says hi to everyone. So thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. We're off now?